Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia channel. This program will explain emotional quotient, why EQ is more important than IQ, which is a very influential popular psychology book. So, why does the book explain that EQ is more important than IQ? Where did the term emotional intelligence come from? What are the specific manifestations of high emotional intelligence? How do we manage our own emotions and those of others? How to deal with negative emotions? After watching this video, you will understand why. Let's look at a real incident in life first. This incident happened in a middle school in Florida, USA. A sophomore in high school stabbed his physics teacher with a kitchen knife because, in a physics test, the teacher gave him the grade good, not excellent. This student has excellent grades in all subjects, and he cut the teacher just because he was worried that this good would affect his admission to Harvard University. A perfect student actually did such an unreasonable thing. Why? In the words of the author of this book, although he has a high IQ, his EQ is too low. The so-called IQ and EQ are two different abilities. One belongs to the intellectual level and the other belongs to the emotional level. Intelligence quotient is referred to as IQ, which refers to the quotient of intelligence. Corresponding to it, there is the word emotional quotient. EQ is referred to as EQ, also called emotional intelligence. It refers to the ability to manage emotions. IQ is the foundation of EQ. Any understanding of things is based on IQ, and the development of EQ can establish the basic direction for the development of IQ, so that intelligence can develop in the direction that can produce the greatest benefit. Now we often talk about emotional intelligence, but at the end of the last century, ordinary people did not have this concept. So, where did the term emotional intelligence come from? As early as 1990, two psychology professors in the United States, John Mayer and Peter Salovey, first proposed the concept of emotional intelligence. Later, they published an article on the topic of emotional intelligence, but did not attract people's attention. Inspired by this, the author Daniel Goleman wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, Why EQ is More Important Than IQ in 1995. The response was huge, occupying the New York Times bestseller list for 18 months, and reprinted countless times. It is precisely because of this book that the concept of emotional intelligence has stepped out of the ivory tower of psychological research, and has become a popular word that is widely known to the public. More importantly, Goleman put forward the view that emotional intelligence is more important than IQ, breaking the IQ determinism has always been. Because of the popularity of this book, the author Goleman became the father of emotional intelligence. He is already a heavyweight in the field of psychology. After obtaining a doctorate in psychology from Harvard University, he has been engaged in the research of behavior and brain science for a long time, and has won the highest honor award and Lifetime Achievement Award of the American Psychological Association many times. As an expert in emotional intelligence research, Goleman has published a series of monographs on emotional intelligence, covering the influence of emotional intelligence in social, workplace, business, family, and other fields. The core point conveyed by Goleman in the book Emotional Intelligence is that EQ is more important than IQ. Why do you say that? In his research, Goleman found that through the learning of emotional management skills, children's brain neural circuits will be reshaped, which can not only improve children's learning ability, but also allow children to maintain good interpersonal communication and be mentally healthier and more cheerful. The most surprising thing is the impact of emotional intelligence in the business world. Goleman has collected data from hundreds of companies around the world, and on this basis, studies the role of emotional intelligence in individuals, groups, and organizations. He saw that 14 of the 16 competencies that make top performers stand out are emotional. The difference between excellent managers and ordinary managers is mainly in the range of emotional intelligence such as charisma, self-confidence, drive, etc. That is, emotional intelligence is a much larger part of what makes a person exceptional. People with high emotional intelligence are indeed more successful. How do you call it high emotional intelligence? There are roughly 5 aspects of the so-called high emotional intelligence, including the ability to recognize and manage one's own emotions, because only by knowing oneself and managing oneself can one become the master of life. Including the ability to self-motivate, which can get you out of the low points in your life. There is also the ability to recognize other people's emotions and manage interpersonal relationships, which can make your dealings with people smoother. Now, let us talk about how to make you a person with high emotional intelligence from 3 aspects. First, how emotions affect our behavior, which is the basis of emotional intelligence theory. Then, how to manage your emotions. The key point is self-awareness of your own emotions. Finally, let's talk about how to manage the emotions of others. The key point is to have empathy. First part. How emotions affect our behavior. If you want to understand this problem, you must first understand 2 parts of the brain. One is called the amygdala, which belongs to the limbic system of the brain. Because it is shaped like an almond, it is called the amygdala. It has the function of emotional memory. The other is called the amygdala. The neocortex, which is the central system of the brain, has analytical and decision-making functions and affects our actions. Simply put, the amygdala controls emotions and the neocortex makes decisions. So, how does the amygdala control emotions? We can compare the amygdala to a warehouse of emotional memory, where all the likes and dislikes we experience in life are stored in the amygdala. When we receive external information, the amygdala will match the emotional memory of the past with the information just received, triggering the same emotions as in the past. This is the emotional memory function. After the amygdala finds a matching emotion, it sends danger signals to various parts of the brain, causing a cascade of physical changes. This process is so fast that you don't feel it. What are the benefits of this function of the amygdala? In the long-term evolution process, the amygdala has evolved this function, which allows you to act according to a response template whenever you encounter a certain type of similar stimulus, which can help you save reaction time. For example, a nurse who used to nurse the wounded in the war, when she saw the baby's diapers hidden in the locker, the unpleasant smell reminded her of the horrible wounded. She appeared on the battlefield because of the extreme fear. His face turned pale and his whole body trembled. You see, under the action of the amygdala, this woman associated the bad smell with the fear stored in her brain, and reacted the same way she did on the battlefield. Her actions were unconscious and rational decision-making was not involved. To talk about rational decision-making, we have to talk about the neocortex. Normally, the information we come into contact with is transmitted to the neocortex through the nervous system, and the neocortex makes a decision after comprehensively analyzing and evaluating the information. After processing by the neocortex, this judgment is then transmitted to the amygdala, causing an emotional response. It can be said that the amygdala and the neocortex, one emotional and the other rational, work together and complement each other to keep emotions and rationality in harmony. But sometimes, there will be a small amount of neurons carrying information, bypassing the neocortex, and directly reaching the amygdala, directly causing an emotional response without the rational judgment of the neocortex. This is our emotional impulse, the reason why you will regret after doing something. It's a bit abstract to say so. Let's look at an event that the author experienced personally. One morning, the author was awakened by a messy sound. He thought the ceiling had fallen, and felt that the ceiling and the contents in the attic had all smashed into the bedroom. So he fled the room without saying a word. After he regained his composure, he realized that it was actually just a pile of boxes scattered in the corner, and the ceiling was intact. So, what was going on in his brain at the time? In fact, when he heard the sound, the amygdala immediately realized the danger, and it sent a signal for the author to run away. The neocortex had no time to examine the current situation, let alone judge the correctness of the action, but everything had already happened. If we compare the smaller bundle of nerves that do not travel directly to the amygdala through the neocortex to an impulsive child, the larger bundle of nerves that pass through the neocortex is like a parent, and it will often dissuade the impulsive child, correct overreactions, and maintain emotional stability. To summarize, how emotions affect our behavior. The amygdala in the brain is a fundamental part of managing emotions, and its interaction with the neocortex determines our behavior. The amygdala is the storehouse of emotional memory. When we receive external information, the amygdala will match the past emotional memory with the information, and then trigger the same emotions as the past, so that the body can respond quickly. This is the generation of emotions. The neocortex makes rational judgments on information and makes decisions, and this decision information is then transmitted to the amygdala. Usually, decisions and emotions are consistent. But sometimes, a small bundle of neurons bypasses the neocortex and goes directly to the amygdala, eliciting an emotional response without rational judgment. This is why sometimes we are emotionally impulsive and end up regretting what we do. When emotions are out of control, it is like a wild horse that has run wild, and sensibility will overwhelm rationality and emotions will be out of control. People don't even know what they've done after they get out of hand. Probably no one wants to be led away by impulsive emotions all the time. People with high EQ know how to manage their emotions so that they can make more informed decisions. So, how do you manage your emotions? The second part. The key to managing your emotions is self-awareness of your emotions. To manage your emotions well, you must first understand your emotions, which requires self-awareness. What is self-awareness? It refers to the fact that you can jump out of yourself and look at yourself when you have an emotional outburst, just like a bystander, aware of your emotional state. So, what exactly is going on in our brains during self-awareness? The researchers found that self-awareness requires the activation of the neocortex. Remember the neocortex we talked about earlier? In fact, the neocortex has another important function, which is the ability to feel about one's own feelings, that is, introspection. Introspection can only occur after the neocortex is activated. Once we activate the neocortex to perceive our emotions, it means that the neural circuits of the neocortex of the brain are actively working, rational thinking is activated, and the neocortex can control the impulsive amygdala to keep emotions stable. To put it bluntly, it is to use rational thinking to overcome emotional thinking. Therefore, it can help us manage our emotions properly and keep us from being slaves to our passions. To better understand self-awareness, let's look at a legend circulating in Japan. One day, a warrior asked a Zen master to explain what is paradise and what is hell. The Zen master reprimanded, "Vulgar people, what are you talking about?" The warrior jumped into a rage after hearing this, pulled out his long knife, and shouted, "You are so rude, I will kill you." The Zen master replied calmly, "That is hell." The samurai was taken aback for a moment, then immediately put away the knife, bowed to the Zen master, and thanked him for his advice. The Zen master said again, "That is the land of ultimate bliss." The warrior suddenly understood. What determines the opposite attitude of the samurai before and after? Of course, it was the self-awareness of emotions. The sudden change of his attitude showed that his neocortex had introspected in time, opened up rational thinking, and stopped his reckless behavior. You see, the only difference between going to hell and going to heaven is this idea, how important self-awareness is. It can be said that self-awareness is like a button for emotional management. When this button is turned on at a critical moment, we may become the masters of our emotions and let our emotions develop in the direction we want. In life, we are often troubled by some negative emotions, such as depression, anxiety, anger, etc., which will affect our quality of life. The author tells us that the best way to deal with negative emotions is cognitive therapy. What is cognitive therapy? It is a method of treating mental illness. The specific method is to question or criticize the thoughts that cause one's bad mood, and persuade oneself with a reason that can calm oneself down, so as to realize the control of emotions. The use of cognitive therapy must be based on self-awareness. Let's take a look at how to manage your negative emotions with a case. Let's start with an example of controlling anger. For example, you are driving on the highway and a car almost hits you. The situation is so dangerous that you break out in a cold sweat. After the fear, of course you will be very angry. This anger will make you think of revenge. You slam on the gas pedal and rush forward. If another car behind you honks its horn at you, you will vent your anger on that driver. If you let such emotions go on, the consequences are simply unimaginable. Please note that at this critical moment, if you have self-awareness of your emotions, for example, you can think, "I am very angry now, maybe I shouldn't be angry." Driving when angry is too dangerous. This shows that the neocortex, after being activated, you can think about the problem with a questioning attitude. You can think like this: "It is impossible for him to hit me on purpose, and I don't know him. He must have something urgent." Or you can think like this: "Driving so fast on the highway, This guy is killing himself. I don't know his level. After thinking about it, do you still get angry? Certainly not. It means that you have successfully controlled your emotions with reason. Look, with self-awareness, it is like turning on the self-help button. We can control negative emotions and let our emotions develop in a direction that is beneficial to us. Just now we talked about controlling anger. Next, let's talk about another example of controlling anxiety. Let's jump out of this book for a while and look at an example that happened to a friend around me. Ms. Zhang often fell ill on the way to work. Whenever she encountered a traffic jam, she felt flustered, dizzy and sweaty, and her hands and feet were cold. At this time, she was very frightened, and the more she was frightened, the more uncomfortable she felt, and finally she felt that she was going to be unable to hold on. As soon as she encountered this situation, she suspected that she had a heart attack, but the strange thing was that every time she got sick, she went to the hospital for examination, but no problem was found. Later, with the help of a psychiatrist, the cause was finally found. It turned out that Ms. Zhang's anxiety was at work. Under the guidance of a psychologist, she insisted on using cognitive therapy. How did she do it? Whenever she is about to fall ill, Ms. Zhang knows that her anxiety is about to attack, so she repeats in her heart, "I am just a little anxious now, I am not sick, and my life will not be in danger." All right. Ms. Zhang tried this method. Although it was not easy at the beginning, and the anxiety just clung to her, she tried her best to restrain it. She found that as long as she reminded herself repeatedly, the situation gradually improved. You see, negative emotions can be overcome. As long as we are aware of our emotions, we can use cognitive therapy to overcome emotional thinking with rational thinking, prevent negative emotions from flooding at will, and guide emotions to develop in a positive direction. We can be the masters of our emotions. The above is the second content we talked about. The key to managing your emotions is to have self-awareness. Self-awareness refers to the ability to be consciously aware of one's emotional state when an emotional outburst occurs. It requires the activation of the neocortex, which has the functions of correcting overreactions, maintaining emotional stability, and generating awareness of one's own feelings. The neocortex controls the impulsive amygdala, keeping emotions on an even keel. Therefore, self-awareness is like a button for emotional management. When this button is turned on at a critical moment, we will guide our emotions to develop in a positive direction, and we will become the masters of our emotions. This is the performance of high emotional intelligence. Just now we only talked about one aspect of high emotional intelligence, controlling your own emotions. Another manifestation of high emotional intelligence is to manage the emotions of others. If you do this, you will be able to obtain harmonious interpersonal relationships. Next, let's explain that the key to managing other people's emotions is to have empathy. The third part. Just like controlling your own emotions, to manage others' emotions, you must first understand the emotions of others, and only on this basis can you control the emotions of others. What, then, is the point of recognizing the emotions of others? It's about having empathy. Let's look at a scene first. One morning, the father wanted to send his daughter to the kindergarten. The little girl cried and wanted to take Mickey Mouse with her, saying that Mickey Mouse was her younger brother and that the younger brother would be afraid at home. But my father knows that kindergartens are not allowed to bring their own toys. What should I do? Let's see what the little girl's father does. He knelt down and asked his daughter, "How old is my brother?" The little girl said, 1 year old. The father said, "Can a 1-year-old baby go to kindergarten? Who should watch it?" The little girl said, "No, I can't go to kindergarten. Kindergarten, let mom watch it." The father said, "Let my brother stay at home and let my mother watch it, and I will accompany him when I come back at night." The little girl readily accepted. This is a father with empathy. He did not use reasons that children cannot understand to persuade his daughter. For example, the teacher did not let us bring our own toys. Well, solve the problem. So, what is empathy? Empathy is the ability to understand the feelings of others. To put it bluntly, it is the ability to empathize. How do you explain it neurologically? We still have to talk about the key component of the amygdala. In interpersonal communication, emotions can be quietly transmitted from one person to another, but the transmission of emotions is not necessarily through language, but also through a lot of nonverbal information, such as tone of voice, eyes, posture, and other information. The amygdala plays a key role. The amygdala will capture emotional information from our nonverbal information and trigger similar emotions of our own without our knowledge. This is emotional contagion. Stephanie Preston, a pioneer in the study of human empathy, found that our brain's nervous system fires almost exactly the same when we experience our own feelings and the feelings of others. For example, when you see others walking a tightrope, as if you were walking on a tightrope, you will naturally feel nervous and your legs will feel weak. This is caused by empathy. Because of the existence of empathy, when you see others happy, you will also be happy. When you see others suffering, you will also feel pain. Most importantly, emotional contagion not only infects emotions, it also prepares the brain to respond automatically, prompting us to behave accordingly. When you see others in pain, you will find ways to help others to reduce this pain. This is the role of empathy in interpersonal relationships. It is the basis for understanding other people's emotions. It can help you understand other people's feelings and intentions to align with the emotions of others. It acts like a lubricant, giving us the opportunity to grow closer. At the same time, it will also stimulate your desire to help others. After understanding empathy, let's take a look at how we use empathy to manage other people's emotions in the process of interpersonal communication. Let's look at another case, which happened on a Japanese bus. A tall worker got into the car, unsteady because he was drunk. He cursed as he walked and shook his fist, pushing a woman with a child to the ground. The passengers were scared and hid. A young man rushed forward to do what was right, and a war was about to break out. Suddenly someone uttered an ecstatic voice, "Hey!" As if seeing an old friend reunited after a long absence, the drunk was startled and found that it was a thin old man who was smiling and waving to him. The drunk was furious. The old man smiled and asked, "What did you drink?" "I drank rice wine, it's none of your business." The drunk continued to shout, and the old man said gently, "Okay, I like rice wine too. Every day, my wife and I warm a small bottle of rice wine and bring it to the yard." The old man kept talking, from the rice wine to the garden. As he talked, the drunken man loosened his clenched fist, sitting paralyzed next to the old man, still muttering, his voice getting smaller and smaller. You see, what is the key to the old man's ability to resolve this turmoil? In fact, it is his empathy. He accurately grasped the psychology of the drunk man and matched his preferences. Starting with the rice wine that the drunk man liked, he could attract the drunk man's attention. At the same time, he tried to keep in line with the other party's emotions. The old man said that he also likes rice wine. Let the drunk feel understood. On this basis, he also tried to divert the drunk man's attention, talking about the garden of his home, so that the drunk man's tense nerves could be relaxed, and finally succeeded in controlling the drunk man's emotions. In addition, if you want to manage the emotions of others well, you also need to control your own emotions well, which is the prerequisite for managing the emotions of others. For example, this old gentleman, when facing a drunk, he is not in a hurry and always smiles at each other so that he can overcome rigidity with softness. You see, empathy fuels our passion to help others, so we put ourselves in their shoes and find ways to take effective action. At the same time, empathy can also help us accurately grasp the psychology of others, allowing us to maintain emotional consistency with others, so that others can listen to your words and accept your influence, and you have the opportunity to let his emotions follow you. Therefore, with empathy, we can manage the emotions of others well. Above, this is the third content we talked about. The key to managing other people's emotions is to have empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand how another person feels. In the process of interpersonal communication, the amygdala receives emotional information through our tone of voice, eyes, posture, and other nonverbal information, and then triggers similar emotions of our own without our knowledge. When we infect the emotions of others, our brains will automatically prepare to deal with this emotion, prompting us to behave accordingly, which is the emergence of empathy. With empathy, we can understand the feelings and intentions of others, and we can be consistent with the emotions of others. On this basis, we can manage the emotions of others well. This is another aspect of high emotional intelligence. Now, let's review the three we shared. First of all, we know how emotions affect our behavior. The amygdala in the brain is the basic component of managing emotions, and its interaction with the neocortex determines our behavior. We also learned that self-awareness and empathy are two key competencies. Self-awareness is the key to managing our emotions. It is like a button for emotional management. When this button is turned on at a critical moment, we will guide our emotions in a positive direction and become the masters of our emotions. When managing the emotions of others, empathy is the most important ability. With empathy, we can understand other people's feelings and intentions, and be consistent with other people's emotions. On this basis, we can well manage other people's emotions. The reason why the book Emotional Intelligence is so influential is that on the one hand, its theme is indeed what the public cares about, and on the other hand, it also reflects Goleman's writing skills and profound insights as a senior author. When this book was published, the concept of emotional intelligence had only been proposed for a few years, and many issues had not been studied clearly. Goleman has great ambitions. He does not simply relay the results of scientific research, but tries to build his own theoretical system. Therefore, he adds a lot of personal insights into the book, such as what components are included in emotional intelligence, and what is the role of emotional intelligence in the important role of success, how to exercise emotional intelligence, improve personal life, and more. The content of these individual plays is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they make the significance of this book surpass ordinary popular science books and become an original and thoughtful work. On the other hand, many of Goleman's theories are purely personal conjectures, or conclusions based on individual cases, lacking the support of scientific data. Therefore, many researchers in the academic world hold negative comments on this book, thinking that it lacks scientific nature. To be fair, none of these problems can be blamed on Goleman himself. To this day, the concept of emotional intelligence is still full of controversy in the academic circles. Some scholars with extreme positions even think that it has no value at all and can be completely replaced by personality or intelligence. Even among those scholars who acknowledge its value, there is no consensus on its definition. Also, in terms of measurement, emotional intelligence is not like IQ, which has developed more mature standardized tests. In such a field where 100 schools of thought contend and there are far more questions than conclusions, although Goleman's approach does not conform to traditional academic norms, it still has its value. This is the end of this episode of the show. What do you think about it differently? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.